Real estate words and terms with meanings and examples, part number 6. Open house, which means a scheduled time for public viewing of a property. For example, the agent held an open house on Sunday. Origination fee, which means a charge by a lender to process a loan. For instance, the origination fee was 1% of the loan amount. Pre-approval, which means a lender's conditional commitment to lend. For instance, the agent advised them to get pre-approval to strengthen their offer. Prepayment penalty, which means a fee for paying off a loan early. For instance, the mortgage had a prepayment penalty clause. Principal and interest, which means the loan payment components covering loan amount and interest. For example, the monthly payment includes principal and interest. Private sale, which means selling a property without public listing. For instance, they arranged a private sale through personal contacts. Property tax, which means annual tax on property value by the government. For example, property taxes are due in April each year. Purchase agreement, which means a contract detailing terms of a property sale. For instance, the purchase agreement was signed by both parties. Radon test, which means a test checking for radon gas levels in a home. For example, the radon test showed safe levels in the basement. Real Estate Investment Trust, REIT, which means a company owning and managing income properties. For instance, investing in a REIT allows buying property shares. Refinance, which means replacing an existing mortgage with a new loan. For example, they refinanced to get a lower interest rate. RESPA, Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act, which means a law protecting consumers in real estate transactions. For instance, RESPA requires disclosure of closing costs. Right of first refusal, which means the right to buy property before others if it's offered. For example, the tenant had the right of first refusal on sale. Second mortgage, which means an additional loan secured by the same property. For instance, they took a second mortgage to pay for college. Seller disclosure, which means information the seller must share about property condition. For example, the seller disclosure noted a past termite issue. Short-term loan, which means a loan with a brief repayment period. For instance, the builder used a short-term loan for construction. Survey, which means a professional measurement of property boundaries. For example, the survey showed a fence was built on the neighbor's land. Tenant, which means a person renting or leasing property. For instance, the tenant signed a 12-month lease. Title search, which means an investigation into property ownership history. For example, the title search revealed no liens. Transfer tax, which means a tax paid when property ownership changes hands. For instance, the buyer paid transfer taxes at closing. Underwriting, which means the lender's evaluation of risk before approving a loan. For example, the loan went through underwriting before approval. Vacancy rate, which means percentage of unoccupied rental units. For instance, the apartment complex had a 5% vacancy rate. Warranty deed, which means a deed guaranteeing clear title to the buyer. For example, the buyer received a warranty deed after closing. Zoning ordinance, which means local laws governing property use and structures. For instance, the zoning ordinance limits building heights. Adjustable rate mortgage, ARM, which means a mortgage with a variable interest rate. For example, the ARM rate adjusted after the initial fixed period,